I go 6 days without
I know.
shaving. I look like Morgan Freeman.
I
I'll be looking
figured that
like
would
Danny
trigger
Glover.
you.
Yeah, I'll be looking like Danny Glover. Like if I go 6 months without a haircut, I definitely look homeless.
What's up, everybody? Laura Sanko here with the great Dean Thomas, the analyst, the host, the coach, the former model. We have him right here, guys. It's part of One-on-One, and we're excited to have him back again, as always, to break down the UFC 289 co-main event between Beneil Dariush and Charles Oliveira. This one's kind of stealing the show for me, honestly, Dean. This is a really, really intriguing matchup.
Yeah, I think that because of the skill sets of both of these guys, they're offensive powerhouses, and they do it at the expense of their defense at times. So this is going to be fireworks. I don't care if it's a minute long or 15 minutes long. This is going to be fireworks because they're so good offensively and so dynamic offensively.
And we've been waiting for this fight. It feels like forever in terms of this particular matchup. We thought maybe it would be in terms of Charles being champion and Beneil challenging, but regardless, it's still an amazing matchup with some pretty heavy implications. I'm wondering what your take is on why Beneil Dariush has been so overlooked. I mean, the man is on an 8-fight win streak. At one point, he had 4 finishes in a row. Why is he not talked about more? Why is there not more buzz around Beneil Dariush?
I mean, unfortunately, in this game, it's not about merit. It's all about your selling ability, your marketability. I mean, like think about in Hollywood, like there's some great actors who just can't sell tickets. I mean, that's just the way it is. Like there's some great rappers who don't sell albums. And Beneil Dariush is that great rapper that you want him on your album somewhere, but he can't sell his own.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what Beneil Dariush is. He's a great fighter, but no one really is clamoring and waiting in line to see him fight.
Yeah.
Unless he's fighting a guy like Charles Oliveira.
And it has nothing to do with his fight style. Like nothing.
No, it's got nothing to do with his fight. No, it's just his personality. He doesn't have a personality that is attractive to people. There's something that's missing in terms of relatability with his personality.
Do you think that once he, and I know we're kind of skipping, steps here, but let's say if he's able to beat Charles Oliveira, which will be by far the biggest win of his career, is that the type of win? Is there enough name recognition in one of the greatest at lightweight ever for people to really get on board with him? Or do you think he'll always struggle to have the verve from the fan base? Because I don't see him changing. I don't see him pulling a Colby Covington and completely, reinventing his shtick anytime soon. He's a very humble guy. He's not going to talk. I mean, it's not only that he won't talk, he goes out of his way to be respectful and deferential to people in every phase of life. I think a lot of that has to do with his faith and the way that he looks at life and the way that he looks at people and the way that he feels like his faith would ask him to relate to other people in the world. Do you think that I guess is a win over Charles, or would a win over Charles be enough to get people really excited about him?
I think it's going to be hard because the only other thing, frequency could help him as well.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what killed him, because he's rattled off those 9 wins and they haven't been in our face enough and frequent enough. And a win over Charles would do great, but he's going to have a quick turnaround.
Yeah.
And he's just not in a position to get the turnarounds that he wants because no one wants to fight him, or just for whatever reason. So like he's really at the mercy of MMA's bias, right? So like no one wants to see him. So now he has to just kind of get what he can get, and then he'll win. And then it's still not enough to please the fans. So then it's just, he's really at the mercy of the bias of MMA fans, which is not the worst thing in the world though, because I don't think he cares that much. There's some fighters who, so there's some fighters that are really doing their best. Like you take a guy like, Joaquin Buckley, who's like, yo, I'm going out of my way to try to be a star. So what do y'all need me to do? But I don't think that,
or even Beneil, like Beneil was,
like Beneil for sure.
He's out there, ringing the bell and like reminding people all the time, hey, I'm here. Hey, I'm being overlooked. And you don't even hear Beneil saying, he'll every once in a while, if he's like cornered into it in an interview, he'll say something that sort of alludes to like, oh, well, maybe, it would have been nice to have had this fight before. But even then, he's not real loud about it.
Yeah, and that sucks for him because he's in a position now that if he ends up and it sucks because he rattled off 9 wins.
Yeah.
And eventually that comes to an end.
Yeah.
And for a guy like him, when it does come to an end, it sets him back so much further than somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
If we're talking about Sean O'Malley could lose and then need one more win and be right back into the mix. If Beneil Dariush loses, this sends him back really far. So
Yeah.
like he can't really afford to fumble the bag here and expect to stay where he's at. So like that's the hard part about being in this position is that you can't fumble, because if you do, you get set back so far.
Yep. It's sort of along those same lines. It's really interesting to me that, coming off of the fight with Islam, and tell me if you agree with this or not, I get the sense, so like coming into the Islam fight and all of his recent fights previous, when we would talk about Charles Oliveira, it would be with tons of superlatives, right? Like we were putting him up there as one of the greatest lightweights of all time. Like we would make those lists on the weigh-in show. He would for sure be on them, top 3. And I get the sense that after the loss to Islam, I felt like he went from really shiny to like he lost so much shininess with that loss to Islam. Different, for instance, than say like a Justin Gaethje. When Justin Gaethje lost to Habib, yeah, he lost, but like you didn't really get the sense that his stock went down that much. Do you agree that you get the sense that like Charles Oliveira went from like, oh my God, he's one of the greatest ever lightweights, to now it's like, he's probably going to lose this one. I don't know.
I mean, you're 100% right about that. And I think maybe a lot of it has to do with he was kind of an overachiever in the first place. And I think we never forgave him for the losses to like Anthony Pettis and Paul Felder. Like we never really forgave him for that. So then when he went on his run, it came with some baggage.
Mm-hmm.
And that baggage was, you're kind of a punk. Remember, we thought he was kind of a punk. Like he quits in fights. And then when he fought Islam, he quit against Islam. Like Islam, like that. I know you probably like, no, he didn't quit, but he quit.
Well, I would just want to, I'll push back on a little bit, but finish your thought.
So the reality is that when Islam got on top of him and put that arm triangle on him, he was like, get me the hell out of here.
I don't entirely disagree with you, because it was fast. I will say that. Like arm triangles usually, those can be difficult to finish, and they're not a sub that is usually a super, super quick one. However, I think it's less about quitting and more about overlooking Islam's striking, because if you remember, I mean, he was cracked right before that. And in my mind, I think he was still rattled when he was trying to grapple, and so was still in the fog of war, so to speak. And that's why the submission happened so quick. But regardless, whether it's not being able to dig deep when necessary, or it's I overlooked my opponent and underestimated his abilities on the feet, regardless of which way it's true, we're both talking about, a mental lapse at the highest level of the game, which you can't make.
I don't think it was his striking that really shook. I mean, that might have shook him a little bit, but so understand this is that when you train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that comes with certain traditions. And those traditions are, you don't ask a black belt to roll, you respect the higher belts, you respect those. And those are like traditional, like psychological ways that we think.
Mm-hmm.
And for Charles Oliveira, now remember when Charles Oliveira got cracked, whether it was Chandler, Gaethje, or Poirier, they cracked him and he invited them down on the ground with him and they wouldn't go. They were scared of the ground with him. I think the fact that when he got cracked and the fact that Islam willingly went down on the ground with him freaked him the hell out.
Oh.
Freaked him out and was like, this guy's a better jiu-jitsu guy than me. This guy, I don't know if he was thinking better, but he was freaked out by how good his jiu-jitsu felt on top.
Yeah.
And he
certainly
panicked.
More powerful grappler.
Yeah. And he panicked and said, get me the hell out of here. Because again, in jiu-jitsu, when somebody's better than you, you know it, and you're willing to just admit it right then and there. Like if I'm going with a black belt, oh, got me in an arm lock.
Yeah.
Got me in a tap, got me in the choke, tap.
Like, for instance, if you and I were to grapple, I would just start tapping before
Like right away, you just automatically. Like, no, but that's not true. Trust me. I haven't grappled somebody for real in like 5 years.
still. I think you'd be fine. Well, that's yeah, you know what? I think that's a really interesting take. And I see your point there in terms of, you know, again, it's sort of like uncharted territory, being uncomfortable. And can you be comfortable being uncomfortable? And Charles hasn't necessarily shown that that's something he's great at doing.
Well,
So
he's
again,
uncomfortable on it. He's okay with being uncomfortable in the striking because
yeah.
that's not his forte. He's good at it, but
Hmm.
that's not where he's most comfortable. He's comfortable on the ground, and when you're better than him on the ground, that freaks him out.
Yeah. So the question is Beneil Dariush better on the ground? And I think he might be.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so. I believe that Beneil Dariush has more fundamentally sound jujitsu, and he's
Yeah.
not going to, get caught in a triangle or, one of them crazy submissions. I think that his jujitsu is going to be so solid that he could shut Charles down. I think if Charles beats Beneil, he has to do it on the feet.
I think if, for the average fan maybe watching this, it's going to be weird to hear because I know that we're not the only ones. I've heard other people, other analysts talking like this too. That a lot of the consensus is that Beneil is actually better on the ground than Charles, which seems crazy to say because we're talking about the guy with the most submission wins in UFC history by a long shot, right? Like he is an incredibly dangerous submission artist. But I think when you look at the details and the fundamentals of how he sets up his submissions and why he has been so successful in those particular spots against those particular people, like a lot of his submissions have come in moments of opportunity, right? Like it hasn't been necessarily really long extended grappling exchanges where he's slowly and methodically positionally set up these techniques. It's been in a scramble or after someone's gotten cracked, or he'll just snap someone's head down, or he'll hop on their back, or you know what I mean? Is that why you see Beneil's grappling as being better based on, I mean, we saw some amazing stuff in that Mateusz Gamrot fight.
Yeah, I just, a lot of people don't understand grappling in the terms like you're just explaining it now. They just think, oh, submission, so he's clearly better.
Yeah.
But the reality is that some people are just, they just hunt submissions more. Like that's their personality. They're just a submission hunter, and they're willing to risk giving up position. And Beneil doesn't fight that way. Beneil is more fundamentally sound. He's going to fight a little bit more conservative and probably go for position over submission in most cases. And he's going to be aware of everything that Charles is trying to do because he's just good. He just understands the submission game. He's not going to attack him the way Charles does, but in terms of defense, he's going to be right there with him. He's going to be like, man, I know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You're not getting your arm under my leg. You're not moving your hips this way. I know what you're doing. I see it coming.
Yeah. Do you think this fight hits the ground quite a bit, or do you think these guys end up turning it into a kickboxing fight? Because both of them are also phenomenal strikers.
I don't think Beneil should trade with him for too long. I think Charles will knock him out on the feet. I really do.
Yeah.
Even though Charles don't got no defense, I just think that he's so precise, and Beneil can be a little reckless defensively.
Uh-huh.
I'm hoping for my sake and for the sake of the fans that this fight is played out a little bit everywhere, because these guys are so good everywhere that we could see some really cool stuff happening, some really cool exchanges, really cool transitions. And that's what I want to see.
Yeah.
Or it can get really reckless and wild,
Yeah.
and these guys could just be like, screw it, and just start throwing crazy punches.
There's times where Charles just says, oh, screw it too. You know what I mean? As precise as he is, he definitely has his moments of wilding out,
Yeah, and we know Beneil does.
Yeah.
So like it could really be like that. There's so many different ways that this fight can go, but the one thing that you do know is that I think both of them are at the point in their career where they're not going to not take a chance.
Yeah.
They're going to take a chance. They're going to put it out there. They're going to let the world know that they deserve the next shot. And the only way to do that is not to just win, but you have to win impressively. And both of them need that win impressively to get the shot at the title, because especially Beneil Dariush, like, because no one wants to see him there anyway. I think they're more willing to to have Islam fight Volkanovski again, or have Islam move up to 170 to fight somebody before they want Dariush to do it. Especially if Dariush wins like a boring decision. That fight
Yeah,
ain't
but
gonna happen.
if he does something crazy, if he submits him, if he knocks him out in spectacular fashion, then
Then I can see, yeah, he can make his case.
yeah, absolutely. Random fact that I picked up watching an interview from Beneil. Did you know that he generally tries to go 6 months between haircuts?
Wow.
How do you feel about that?
I couldn't do it. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I go 6 days without
I know.
shaving. I look like Morgan Freeman.
I
be looking like Danny Glover.
You.
Yeah, I'd be looking like Danny Glover. Like if I go 6 months without a haircut, I definitely look homeless.
He was talking about how his wife and his sister and his mom like all sort of like team up, and because he doesn't like to be told what to do, they just sort of like soft sell him, surround him, and like make him get his hair cut. But I wondered why he had kept his hair so fluffy last time, but apparently the man does not like to meet the shears.
Man, he just got to cut it all off, man. Like, and just if you go 6 months, like really go low with it. That's weird.
That kind of George Clooney, like just
that salt and pepper. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, so here's another. So I did a UFC watch party when he fought. I think it was Gamrot, and everybody in the house, no one could remember his name, so we just referred to him as Salt and Pepper.
Love it. Salt and pepper.
Yeah, salt and pepper.
Love it. Do you want to make a prediction on this one, or do you pass?
I will make a prediction on this one. But I think Beneil wins, but not impressively.
You think it's a war?
It'll be a war, but he won't win to where we're going. Give him a title shot, and then it's gonna sit him. He's gonna have to fight Sarukian and Jalen Turner and and everybody else before he gets another look over.
That sounds about right for him. That man has had a long, long journey to this position.
Either that, or he gets knocked out brutally.
You think so? If you think he wins, it's a decision. If he loses, he gets knocked out.
Yeah.
All right. I can't. We need to start keeping track of your predictions, because honestly, I'm not sure how you're doing, but
I'm doing terribly.
No, I doubt it. I mean, my gut tells me that you're doing great, Dean. Honestly,
as long as I can give you an either or, I'm gonna be really good at that. But sometimes when I just make one prediction, like I can't tell you what's going to happen. I can tell you what just happened.
We have jobs in educated guesswork. I mean, that's really what it is. Yeah. Honestly, at the end of the day, I hate making predictions. That's why I make you do it.
Yeah. Well, those are my predictions, and I'm not going to shy away from it. So
perfect.
Put it out there.
Well, regardless, we've got some great fights coming up this weekend. UFC 289 goes down in the beautiful white north of Canada, where we've not been in a while. So it should be fun fight week. And we'll see you guys there. Thank you so much, Dean.